All right. So, hey everyone, I'm Kate from Simple Pin Media. We're a Pinterest management company. We help bloggers and business owners manage their pages, but also teach, coach, and train how to use Pinterest and how to maximize their results over there. And so, part of what I want to start doing is really helping people not just have Pinterest tips, because there's a ton of Pinterest tips out there about how to pin, what to pin, images, and all that stuff. But I really want to take it beyond that. I want to talk about what you do with your traffic once it gets to your website and how you really maximize your website for Pinterest traffic. And so I've invited Liz here today. She runs Hoosier Homemade, which is a fantastic site, and you will get tons of baking recipes. My daughter scrolls through every once in a while and she's like, I want to make cupcakes and cupcakes. So if you want to make cupcakes, you need to go to Liz's site. But one thing I think that Liz does a great job with is she works with brands, and she also makes sure that the content that she's creating for those brands is Pinterest friendly, meaning she can use those posts on Pinterest to give her traffic for the next couple of years. Because as we know, Pinterest traffic can linger for a very long time. And so what I want Liz to talk about today is just how she works with brands and how she really takes that content and maximizes it for Pinterest traffic. And so before we really dive into that, Liz, just tell us a little bit about yourself, some history of how you got started, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay, great. As Kate said, I'm Liz from Hoosier Homemade. We also have a food-only blog, which is Pocket Change Gourmet. And I started Hoosier Homemade in 2009, and it was basically just for, at first, a passion to share what I loved, homemaking. So that is baking, cooking, decorating, cleaning, organizing, even cleaning the toilets, everything, everything about homemaking that I loved. So I wanted to share that first. Then shortly after that time period, we were at a season in our life where all of our children were in school. I have 3 boys. They were all in school, but I needed a job. I needed to bring in income. And so in the meantime of starting the blog, I was doing a few side jobs as well. And so, but I really wanted the blog to succeed. And so then shortly after that, in early 2010, I went to my first conference, and I came home and decided that the blog was going to make some money. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to do it or anything about it. And I had no money at all to invest. So I started with a flip phone camera, not even a smartphone. It was a flip phone. And I just made my way up from the flip phone. Then I graduated to a point and shoot. From there, we've now graduated 3 times, and we use a 70D camera now. So during that process in the beginning, not having any money, I built the blog on content. That was my focus. Everything had to be 110%. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't just going to put up, even though at that time the pictures were not great, I wasn't going to put up just a little, kind of picture. I just wanted everything to be really great. Okay. So, and I think because of that, and starting out that way and continuing through that process, we still hold that true today, and we work that way with brands as well. And I feel that's probably why we have succeeded. So fast forward a few years, and about 4 years into the blogging process, I was so busy with sponsored posts that my husband Doug quit his full-time job and came home to build the business with me, and now we do it together full-time, more than full-time, actually, about 60 hours. So, but that's okay. We love it.
Awesome. So then in that time frame, when did you start paying attention to Pinterest and start noticing that some of maybe your traffic was coming from there?
Well, I was a late bloomer, so to speak, on Pinterest. I was not one of the ones that kind of jumped on right right away. And so it's grown slowly because of that. I don't have, tons and tons. I don't have hundreds of thousands or a million followers on Pinterest, but we get great results and great traffic from it.
Yeah. Well, I think, you do have a lot. So you have 56,000, which granted, you're right. It's not 100,000 or a million or anything like that. But for being a late adopter, 56,000 is really, really great. And so also full disclosure, we actually manage Liz's Pinterest page for Hoosier Homemade and Pocket Change. So we have a little bit of an idea of what type of traffic comes in for them. And Hoosier Homemade gets about 35 to 40% of Pinterest traffic. So it's the steady driver for them, and it goes up more for the holidays because they are heavy holidays, especially right now with their 100 Days of Homemade, which you should definitely check out for great ideas. And Liz, we pin for you 25 pins a day, but you also pin as part of like some sharing groups too and on your own. So how many would you say?
I'd say about between 8 and 10, depending on the day. Some days I don't get any done.
Right.
If traveling or, something like that. So I would say probably maybe about 30 to 40 per week.
Okay. Got it.
Some days I don't do any, and other days I do, a few more. So
right, it ebbs and flows for us all, right? When we can get on. So then, also in this process, when did you start working with brands?
Well, pretty early on, I'd say probably 2010, we started working with brands and just have escalated since then. I want to say about 2011, I was invited onto the Walmart Moms blogger program. And that was a huge step for us to work with Walmart. And I feel like because of that, we have received various sponsored posts as well. But I also think that part of it was just, a lot of it was just content.
Okay, got it. And so where you're at today, 5 years later in that journey of working with brands, how many posts per week would you say are sponsored?
We do between 3 and 5 per week between the two blogs.
Okay. And when did you kind of start seeing the potential that it was driving traffic for you, that you were able to use these posts not just as kind of a one-off, but as really good traffic drivers?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to content and then just positioning it correctly for Pinterest. So that is, taking the shot so that it's going to be Pinterest friendly, so that it's a vertical shot, so that it's as close as you can get it, especially for food.
Okay.
And sometimes we add words and no words. We offer both because some people don't like having words on their pins. Okay. And separate from that, we also do some long collage pins. So those not always will be on the post itself, but we've seen some good traffic from those as well in the last few months.
Okay. Would you say that you also kind of have a standard format for to make it easy for you to keep you organized? These are the 3 things you always do in a post. Right. I mean, you said some of them just a minute ago, but is that kind of, you follow a formula?
Right. It is pretty standard. We do, as I said, a vertical shot for the main hero shot at the beginning of the post. Sometimes it has words, sometimes it doesn't. Right. It really depends on the shot. Mm-hmm. I've worked really hard, like I said a little while ago, from using a flip phone to now my DSLR. We have worked really, really hard on our photography. So sometimes I'm hesitant to put words across a big piece of apple cake that I really want the picture to stand out. So that's kind of why I started doing both. And again, like I said, people like pinning, pin differently all the time. So depending on the person.
And for those who are just, when Liz is referring to words, we're talking about like that text overlay that goes across the top. Right. And just a note about that is one of the great things that I've seen you do and other people do is picking a very similar font and picking kind of a consistent font so that when people see even those text overlays, they can recognize that it's from a particular brand or from you or from your favorite blogger, anything like that. And so when you are trying to choose these text overlays, always make sure that it's really easy to read, and especially on mobile, because 80% of the people on Pinterest are on mobile. And so if you do have this hard to read font, or you have too many, that it can be really hard to read. And so do you have any other tips for people adding text to their pictures, things that you've learned?
Well, we just, what I've been doing for, I would say probably a good 4 or 5 months or more, I've just stuck with the very standard bold print font. We use PicMonkey. I just like keeping things very, very simple. And I know that I probably should dive into the Photoshop world or the Lightroom world, but PicMonkey works for me. It's easy, it's simple. I'm getting good results. So I just haven't taken the time to dive into those other areas. But yeah, just bold font. And we most of the time use white. And if I'm making a collage, I'm sure that if you're familiar with Pinterest, you've seen the collages where there's two very long, it's a long pin and then two pictures with a block of color in the middle. And oftentimes you've seen just white in the middle, but we've been using color and then white font, and it seems to work out really, really well.
Yeah, I will agree with that, because when Liz started trying that type of image, she had a fall decor pin that just took off like wildfire. And, a lot of people talk about how they don't see their pins gaining traffic, but this is one that, it took off to 4,000 repins within like a couple of weeks, which was really, or even a week, I think. It was really incredible to see that image take
that
off.
post has about 22,000 pins on it, that post.
Yeah, it's really great. And one thing to note is that image isn't actually in the post, right? Like it's just on Pinterest. And so that's another tip.
That post, it is on the post. Or with that pin, it is in the post, but not always do we do that. Depends on the size of the pin, because if you have a pin on your post that is super long, let's say 700 wide by 1500 long, then the reader is scrolling and scrolling and scrolling to get to the text to actually. And while that's good for ads, sometimes you're going to lose a reader after a while if they're just scrolling continually, especially on mobile. So we like keeping the photos on the post smaller. We do 600 by 900 most of the time. I'd say probably 90% of the time we do that, 600 by 900 on our post. And I would just suggest playing, and that's what I did in the beginning. I just played with the size until I knew how it looked on the post, and then how large of an area that you have on your site.
Right. Okay. So veering back a little bit back to brands, just a real quick question that Liz and I talked about questions before, but this is something that we had talked about just real briefly this morning before we jumped on, was how do you handle product placement in your photos? And how do you determine how to have, like, where to put it, how to have it tastefully, and how have you kind of learned that craft over the years? Because it is a craft. It's an art to figuring out where it looks so that readers don't automatically jump that it's sponsored content.
Right. Well, two things that we do all of the time is, the first thing is that when we have a sponsored post, we try really hard to make that organic to our blog, and also organic to just in general into Pinterest. So we wouldn't just put up a post that said, here's a product, you can use it in this, this, and this. We try to take that product and make a spin on it. So for example, last week, 2 weeks ago maybe, we had a post from duct tape. So instead of just, here's some duct tape, wrap it around a pumpkin, and there's your Halloween decoration, we created decorations on the stairs. And we took orange paper and made a jack-o'-lantern on the stairs, and then we took bats and cut them out of paper. They had duct tape on them and some other various things. So we try to make that organic to what's going to be good for, for readers, for traffic, for Pinterest. So trying to make it a little bit, again, back to the 110%, try to give a little bit more. So that's one thing that we do often. I would say all of the time. The next thing that we do as far as placement is that the hero shot for Pinterest, rarely will we have, I can't even think of any off the top of my head, that we have the product in the shot itself. Because it's just for Pinterest, it's better, people will be like, oh, I really don't use that product, so I'm not even going to look at the recipe.
Okay.
So, so sometimes the traffic can come to you without that, so say for instance, they'll see an apple cake and they'll, oh yeah, I want to bake an apple cake, and they'll come over to the post, not knowing that that's a sponsored post because it didn't have anything in it. There are totally different points of view with product shots, and we try to keep it very minimal if we can. Totally depends also on the contract. So some brands will say, you have to have the product in at least one shot. If that's the case, obviously we do that. And typically we'll do an ingredient shot so that it just shows the grouping of ingredients. And that would be the product shot.
Okay. So I really also love the fact that you, I'm getting feedback all the time, which is weird. I've done that before. But can you talk a little bit about just what are the FTC posts and guidelines and descriptions that they have and require you to put in your posts?
Sure. Well, first I'll tell you what I know, and then I'll also say that I'm not a lawyer. We just do what we're told to do as far as what FTC says and all of that. So the regulations are that you absolutely 100% have to disclose on the post that you were paid either by compensation and or product for that post. So that is FTC rules. You have to disclose that to your readers. Now, as far as social media goes, Pinterest and so forth, as far as I know, there are no FTC rules for Pinterest specifically. So depending on, again, sometimes the contract, a brand will say, anytime you use this, you have to add hashtag ad, A-D. Again, depending on the contract. For Pinterest, especially if we don't have an ingredient or a supply, the brand, the product in the shot, we don't use that on Pinterest. Now, on the other social media platforms, we do. We use it just because, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we always use hashtag ad.
Right, and hashtags aren't good to use on Pinterest. In fact, they discourage it because it doesn't work the same as it does on Twitter or Facebook.
Right, so that's one reason why we don't really even use hashtags on Pinterest at all.
Right. So what are, maybe those who are just getting started with brands, what suggestions would you give them as far as, creating their content and creating content for Pinterest, like really maximizing those posts so they can get more traffic and not just the one and done deal?
I would say content. Content is always king. Content and consistency are the two things that basically built our business. So again, going back to the 110%, and also if you are wanting to maximize and work again with brands, it's really important. So my point of view when I was working with a brand, it still is, from the very beginning to this day, was that if a brand asked me for A, B, and C, I was going to give them A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z. So that then they would come back and say, you did such an awesome job, we want you to also do this. Right. Or now will you work with us for a whole year? So potentially you could get a whole year or maybe even 6 months ambassadorship with that brand.
Yeah, that's a huge one because then that's consistent income and you've shown and you've proved that you're willing to go above and beyond. And even, just in the example of the duct tape, really showed this whole idea of, we're not just going to show you a pumpkin, duct taped. We're going to show you what you can do with it. And as a result, people get excited about that and they go buy duct tape.
Right.
I've done it tons of times. When people show me a great example of something or a great product, I feel like I try to go out and buy it almost immediately, because you've just shown me its usefulness. And that is really key on Pinterest as well, is that Pinterest users are looking for future ideas. They're looking for tips and tricks and things that are useful. So what can you provide for them that's useful? Even though it is a sponsored content or a sponsored post, it still is something that people are going to find value in. So like you said, if you can create content that has value, that is where you really get the traction and that continued, page views for a long time.
Right. Absolutely.
So we'll just round it out here with the last question, which I feel like you've answered mostly all of it. But is there anything left that you haven't told people, or that you would tell people? Any last tips about working with brands on Pinterest, or have we kind of covered it all?
Well, we never brought up promoted pins at all.
Oh yeah, that's a great
that's
point.
one thing that we've done a little bit of, not a whole lot. And so actually we have a post coming up in a couple weeks, and they want a specific photography. And so one of the things that we built into our media kit recently in the last few months are promoted pins. So we're doing a sponsored post for them, but we're also doing an additional, I don't know, I think 5 or 6 or 8 more shots that they can use for social media or wherever they want to use it. So that's extra income. So definitely, I mean, I think that's one thing to set yourself apart with a brand. Again, giving more, offering them something different. Not all brands have a photographer that is willing or able or even at their disposal to create shots that could then be used on Pinterest and other places.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's also, I think I had done a post, and I'll link to it, is about promoted pins. And I had done some testing on them and different types of things that, you can do with promoted pins. So that's another blab topic, essentially, that we need to talk about, because there are such great advantages with doing promoted pins on Pinterest, and they are getting great return for people. And it's not just during the time that you promote your pin. It lingers, again, for a really long time, which is so unique, as opposed to Facebook, Twitter, or even Instagram, where the feed just moves so quick and it's gone. Whereas Pinterest, it lives for months and months and months. So doing a promoted pin is always a good idea, with a sponsored content or even not sponsored content that people have.
Yeah, either way is fine. And even if you have it, especially if you have a great description, then that's going to pull up in a Google search or in a Pinterest search as well. So adding that in is important as well, because now next year for Halloween, somebody that searches Halloween decorations could potentially come across our duct tape post, and here it is a whole year later and we're still getting traffic on it.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I would like to bring up just for you is that you actually started, because you do work with brands, you had started a Facebook group.
Right.
Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. In our Facebook group, we have about 500 members, and we just help bloggers work with brands. So we answer those questions that they have. And if they have a specific question for blogging, like earlier this week, there was a couple questions that I am not an expert on, but I know lots of people that are experts. And so I always try to spread the wealth, as you say, and bring in the other experts so that they can answer the questions for the bloggers. So our group is just a Facebook group. It's called Bloggers with an S, Support Network. And you can just request to join, and we'd be happy to have you.
Awesome. And you can go ahead and put that link to, I think, in the sidebar where the questions are. And at this time, actually, let's go ahead and open up to questions. We're not going to open up a seat, but if you want to type any questions that you have for Liz or you have for myself that are really on brands, I'm not quite sure if we'll have any, but if we do, we'll be happy to answer them. But in the meantime, Liz will put the link up there to her group. She's been really helpful with the information as far as working with brands and how they do it. And also just even, talking about pitch letters and anything like that can really open the door to you working with brands and then open up that Pinterest avenue right there as well.
Right.
So, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of questions, which is totally fine since this is actually our first interview. And I love
everything.
Yeah, we did cover everything. So I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to stop this recording for now. And then if anybody wants to watch it in the future, it'll be on simplepinmedia.com. And there is a link up there for blog. And it'll be over there. And I'll probably post it next week once I go through and kind of make notes about this because Liz has given some great information. But make sure you follow Liz. Twitter is @HoosierHomemade. And I think Pinterest is actually pinterest.com /Hoosier Homemade.
Yep. Or Hoosier Homemade everywhere.
Hoosier Homemade everywhere. It's kind of the same for me too. If you want to follow me on Pinterest, it's pinterest.com /simplepinmedia. The same Twitter and Facebook. I'm not super active on Twitter. Facebook.com /simplepinmedia is more where I share tips. And I also do a weekly email list. And I just want to be as helpful as I can to people with their Pinterest. And it's so confusing to bloggers and business owners that it's something that I really want to make sure that people feel like they understand the platform and that they can, really maximize it to their full potential. Okay, so we do have a question. So Liz, how do you approach brands when you don't have a point of contact? What's your protocol?
Well, actually, I'll be totally honest with you. We do not do this a whole lot. The reason for that is because we have lots and lots of work, and I feel like it does go back to great content and being consistent. However, I do know that most of the time you can either do a Google search and just put in the brand name and PR company or PR agency. You could find it that way. Sometimes at the bottom of a site, it also has of the brand website, it will have PR information or contact information like that, those types of things down at the bottom. It depends on the site and how it's worded, but most of the time you should be able to find something at the bottom in the footer of a brand site.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I've always heard too, answer those emails. If you get any pitch emails, always answer them.
Yes, absolutely. So we had this discussion a little while ago, I'd say a month or more ago, in the blogger group network Facebook group. And always, I would say probably 95% of the time, I pitch back, no matter what it is. Sometimes the more you do, the more you'll get to know, oh, they're just trying to send me a PR thing just to have me promote it. But most of the time you can pitch back. So long story short, this company contacted me. They wanted me to do something. And so I pitched it back and we went back and forth a little bit and ended up that they only had some budget in their, some money in their budget for a tweet. So because I pitched back, I ended up with a $50 tweet that took me, I think it was 50, I don't remember now, but it took me literally 30 seconds. She sent me the tweet to put out. And it was not like a crazy company that I wouldn't be promoting anyway. I wouldn't do that. But easy enough. I mean, it was about 15 minutes of my time total with negotiating back and forth. Had I not responded to her, I wouldn't have made $50 in 15 minutes.
And that's a pretty good hourly rate, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants that.
Right. So absolutely, we email back, and in the Facebook group, we also have a pitch letter that we use all of the time to pitch back to companies, and that's how we started the relationship and with a brand, and you just kind of build on that over the time. So, and thank you for loving our blog. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's you've got some. Oh yeah, her. So at first I was like, oh yeah, I love your blog. Okay, so I am going to. We're just going to stop this now, and we'll end for the day. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your information and just talking about your whole history and what you guys have gone through. It's just a great, inspiring story, and I continue to just be in awe of the great things that you guys are doing, and continue just to do 110%.
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Just like Simple Kin. We love you too.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Have a great day, everyone. And Liz, you too. I'll see you later.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.